Another week has gone by. We're still in lockdown. My hair grows longer by the second, and I'm starting to look like a Leo Sayer tribute act. But I'm here on Zoom with my pal Dave, and that can mean only one thing.
You love me more than you can say.
No.
I make you feel like dancing.
No.
You're a one-man band.
No. It's time for the Constant Geekery podcast.
I don't know how many people will get all those Leo Sayer references, Pete. You looked a little confused, I'll be honest.
Well, the only
You're
thing
not a
I know
Leo
about
Sayer fan?
No, the only thing I know about Leo Sayer is that he's got curly hair, and I have got curly hair, and I normally keep it quite short, but it's hard to cut, so I don't let anyone do a lockdown trim on it, so it just grows.
It grows.
It grows.
Good. Well, what have we got in store for our podcast this evening? Let me just give you a quick rundown of what we're going to be talking about. So in a moment, we'll be reviewing a few of your comments from last week. We want to talk about the Blackmagic event.
Yes, we do.
There's a couple of products of interest in there. Whether or not they're of massive interest to our audience, don't know the answer to that. Let us know if you want to hear more about camera tech in our podcast. But a few things that they announced which are quite interesting. I think our main topic this week, we're going to cycle back to the whole M1 SSD lifespan and usage, because there's some interesting forum comments going on.
There is indeed. Quite excited to talk about this.
Yes, me too. And of course, we've got. I did a video on the main channel on YouTube about their next iteration of Apple Silicon. So, be interested to get your thoughts on that as well.
Yeah. I got a comment on that in a minute, in line with one of the comments from our subscribers. So we'll come back to that in a minute.
Okay.
But Dave,
So,
are you drinking again this week?
I am able to drink again, but I don't think we need to do this section, Pete. I think we can probably just move straight on if you like.
I know that we get a lot of flack in the comments if you weren't drinking. There were a lot of comments last week about, hoping you could get back to drinking again sometime soon. So I'm sure it's something that the subscribers expect. So what have you got?
Well, actually, my wife bought me a nice bottle of Aberlour, which is a very nice single malt whiskey.
That's amazing.
Which I'm not allowed to enjoy tonight because Pete has supplied me with a drink.
So we're going to go. We've got Pete Eats, so I feel like Dayv Drinks should be a thing.
I see. This is incredibly harsh. Now I'm going to show you this for the benefit of those watching on YouTube. That's youtube.com/The Constant Geekery Podcast. But if you're listening on Spotify or iTunes or some such, then I'll try and describe what it is that I've been given.
Shall I describe it like an audio description thing?
Yeah, could you?
Dave holds up a gold cube with the words Chambord written on it. It's very gaudy. It's very gaudy and looks much more expensive than it actually was.
I imagined that it may not have a price to match its look. I think it's possibly aimed at the fair agenda, Pete. I don't think this is a drink for big butch chaps to go into a shop and buy.
No, it isn't, but I did it anyway. And you got
did
off
you
like... Yes, I did.
Well, no, the reason I say this, Pete, is because... Let me just remove this from the
I've
from
still
the box.
got the security tag.
You've been shoplifted again, haven't you?
Yeah, that's it. I wanted to get nicked for an £8 bottle of Chambord blackcurrant liqueur.
How did it not go off when you were...
No idea. There you go.
So I now have to try and remove this security tag. So what I'm holding in my hands, I don't know if you've ever seen Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
Oh, it does.
The Holy Hand Grenade of Antioch.
That's exactly what it looks like.
This. So I will try and get this off. Just 3 or 5 seconds.
Just while you're doing that, if this is your first time coming to the Constant Geekery podcast and you're expecting tech speak, don't worry, you are in the right place. We just have a little bit of a ritual kind of thing that we do. So we will get there and it will be worth it, I promise. So keep listening or watching.
So you've got this kind of this lid of this bottle. Let me just try and hold that up to the camera. There you go. Don't know if you can see that. Does it focus? Okay, and I'll describe it then for those listening. It's the top of the cap has the cap itself is gold, and then the very top part is kind of like faux rubies in the shape of a raspberry, because I think this is a raspberry liqueur with a kind of gold leaf in the middle or something. It's all designed to look very expensive and regal, but allow me just to tap the lid for you.
Oh, it's made out of final Google Pixel material.
It is finest plastic, is what it is. So, Chambord or Chambord or something, I suspect.
I thought it was blackcurrant, but you just said it was raspberry, is it?
It says black raspberry liqueur, product of France, and 16.5% volume. So, there's all sorts of kind of recipes on the box for cocktails, and I suspect this is a fine addition to many cocktails, but that is not how I'm going to sample this. Stop laughing. I am going to drink this neat like a man.
Excellent. That's what we want. I know that's what the subscribers want as well.
I have to say the design of the cap makes it very difficult to remove. Oh, that is just ridiculous. So I'm going to pour myself a measure.
Let's see how much of a measure.
Hang on, I've got to sniff it first. You know when you buy jelly, and for our American audience, I mean Jell-O, and you can buy it in this country. You can get it sort of as a very concentrated gelatin that you kind of break up and
put in water,
melt.
hot water.
But you know that smell when you open the packet. Yeah.
Okay. This is probably going to backfire. You're probably going to absolutely love this.
Do you know what? I hope I do.
Nice glugging sound there.
My wife is proper excited about this. She's looking forward to sampling this. Right then. Is that a sufficient measure, Pete?
That's acceptable.
Are you happy?
Yeah, that looks
happy
good.
With that amount?
Yeah.
So I think that's...
It's not Vimto. Do it. Do it.
I've got to be honest, Pete, the smell isn't... Oh. Okay. That's really weird. And it's not unpleasant. It's not unpleasant. So, joke's on you, Pete.
Okay. Well, I'll just...
You shoplifted in vain. I say it's not unpleasant, but then I wouldn't go so far as to say it's pleasant either. It lacks any kind of bite or substance to it. You get an initial kind of hit, and it immediately washes away to nothingness. If it was a colour, it would be grey, and if it was a temperature, it would be lukewarm. It's just that kind of.
And if it was a marketing effort, it would be Interlevo.
And I tell you what, I'm going to do here, Pete.
You're going to down it.
I'm going to down it. And I tell you why. Because I don't want to sit and drink that through the podcast and by accident take a swig of it thinking I'm getting some nice whiskey or something. So I got a backup plan with a bottle of Kronenbourg.
That's not going to go well with what's just gone down your throat, but there we go.
It's probably not. Anyway, I imagine that you'll be eating something later and I'll be able to have a laugh at your expense.
Yes, quite possibly. Well, yes.
So, folks, I cannot recommend Chambord to you, or Chambord, or Chambord, or Chambord, however you want to say it.
No. Okay.
Should we move on to some comments?
Yeah. So I think
Whilst I swill my mouth out.
Yeah, wash it out. On the theme of drinks, I think it's Strict Select. Loving the Vimto, got him laughing. So yeah, here's to you. Got some more Vimto again, and it's kind of like the Kool-Aid of the channel, really, isn't it? I'll have some of that in a minute. So yeah, everyone likes Vimto. Alex G says, I bought an Intel and an M1 at the same time, because we were talking about the Intel Evo standard last week, weren't we? And to start the Intel, I hit the keyboard and walked away for a minute or two. So he concedes the M1 is faster, but even it has slowed down a bit. But the real system that has been rock solid is his AMD Ryzen 9 with the 4900HS laptop, actually. misread that, which is kind of what we'd expect, isn't it?
Well, that's a pretty excellent processor. I don't think it actually. I don't think it's as fast as the M1 in multi-core tests or some multi-core tests, but it is a phenomenal processor, and the next version of it as well.
Yeah.
Although it's unobtainium still, but
Yeah.
that does look. I'm extremely tempted with either I think I might have said this last week, the Asus G14, or possibly their Flow X13.
Ooh.
Although I don't have enough money to waste on that. But
anyway,
well, think 30. No. This is a good point. Think 13-inch laptop, Pete, with super fast AMD processor in it and a GTX 1650 Ti, I think. So decent onboard dedicated graphics in a smaller light chassis, but then it comes with an RTX 3080 in a useful dock charger thing that you can plug into the side of it. So you can have a 13-inch laptop with a 3080. That would be an absolute beast for gaming, but also for the work that we do with a bit of video editing would be fantastic. So I'm very excited about that. Don't have this kind of $3,000 kicking around spare to buy one, but if anyone from Asus is watching and wants to send us a review copy, I'd be very grateful to have a
couple of review copies. I think it's fair to say.
Couple of review copies, please.
Good choice, Alex, and thanks for the comment. Thanks for watching. Evil Umpire hopes your dram lifting arm is back in action soon. So I was going to say,
I've got it's pretty good, as you can see if you're watching on the camera. I've got some movement back in my arm. It's a bit sore, but I can lift a glass.
I was going to say, why not take another pull on your drink, but you've already dealt with that. So
well, I can.
Yeah, go on then.
I'll take some beer.
A couple of comments around touchscreen thumbprints. John Gill agrees, never wants to see a touchscreen on the Mac. Kind of agree with you there, John. And Graphics Pad, who I still haven't forgiven for the peanut butter and pickle sandwich suggestion, does agree with us. Our thumbprints on the screen are the worst. And I thought we should probably ask subscribers, maybe leave a comment. What are your pet peeves that people do with your machine when they use it? Mine is either commenting on your mouse choice setup or orientation, of the mouse. So, particularly with like a Magic Mouse, you can have it going different ways. And I hate it when people say, "Oh, what's wrong with your mouse?" It's like, nothing, that's how I like it. But that's one of my pet peeves. You got a pet peeve?
No, but I when you were talking about the thumbprints and then asking people what they don't like others doing with their machine, it just called to mind. I'm going back quite a few years, Pete, but do you recall one of our clients asked us to have a look at a faulty laptop that belonged to his teenage son?
Yeah, I do.
It had sort of pubic hair sprouting out of it, and some curious stains. I tell you,
Oh, it's one of those podcasts this evening.
It was horrific. I actually had to clean it before I could work on it. It was
that was
so horrible.
That was grim. I think that possibly was responsible for COVID-18, maybe. Anyway, moving on.
Sorry.
Sunday races. Regular commenter, thank you again. First of all, appreciated you soldiering on last week in a measurable degree of pain. So you were. So thank you. Any updates on Bluetooth issues being resolved with the latest Big Sur update, which I think reportedly in 11.2 they have certainly mentioned them as being resolved.
Yes, they are supposed to be. They've supposedly done something. Sorry, can't get my words out. I haven't personally tested it because I've been busy with other things, like recovering this week. So I have installed it, and I do intend to test it. So perhaps I can report back on that next week.
Yeah, absolutely. And we had a little chat about Lightroom Classic running on Rosetta because that was one of the Intel Evo tests, and some massive swapping going on. In one case,
I think we'll talk about that in a bit.
So yeah, maybe bring that down into the main comments there. So thank you for those comments. And then Nikola Klisovic, I think it is, asked if we could perhaps speculate on future graphics solutions from Apple and what potentially the next powerful machines might be from Apple. And I have to say, I was going to comment, Nicola, but we don't do that kind of speculation on the channel. rumour mongering and sensationalism is not what we do. So we're going to have to. Oh wait, no, you just did a video on that, didn't you?
I may have just done that.
Check out the video on the latest on the main channel. That's youtube.com/constant geekery, Nicola, and you will see our rampant speculation and clickbaitery. What were you playing at?
I just sold out, Pete. That's all there is to it.
Honestly, your heart is like a shriveled little raisin beating in that chest of yours now. I'm disgusted.
I will explain when we talk about it later. And good suggestion on talking about the GPU possibilities. So maybe we can speculate a little bit in this podcast as well. Speculating is fun.
Oh, absolutely. I was only being silly. Or was I? Anyway.
Let's talk about Blackmagic's event. Now, for those who aren't familiar with Blackmagic Design, we did give you a brief overview of the company last week. It's an Australian company. And they do all sorts of really fantastic video products at sensible prices. They make great cameras, but they make a lot of professional gear that I don't even understand at all, because unless you're into broadcasting, you probably wouldn't. But we do use some of their products and like them very much. Now, when we say a Blackmagic event, it's not like an Intel event or an AMD or an Apple event. It's more of the CEO just kind of demonstrating stuff, and he's quite a down-to-earth guy, chatting to camera. Nonetheless, we were interested to see what was going to come out at the event. And you may be familiar with the range of Blackmagic Pocket cinema cameras. And these are, in fact, I have one behind me and I'm just going to grab it. 2 seconds.
Get it. These are very cool. In fact, I think that they are actually used in film production quite regularly, aren't they? Yeah. Like movie film production. Look at that.
I'll just hold mine up for the camera. Obviously, I've attached a lot of stuff to it, but they're great cameras and they're very versatile, and you can add lots of things to it. You can record from this camera straight onto a Samsung T5 SSD in high quality raw codecs, which we have mentioned on the channel obviously before, and then we edit in DaVinci Resolve. I don't use this camera for everything that I do. When in fact, the last few videos I've done in the studio with the camcorder, which is, and when you work with the footage off the camcorder, which is a professional grade 4K camcorder, I might add, it's just nowhere near as nice as what comes off of this somewhat cheaper Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera.
I was pretty blown away the first time you showed me the sheer amount of depth. It's quite incredible, because it's one of those things that you've definitely got a more trained eye and ear than I have in a lot of things, but it's one of those things that you don't know what you're missing, but when someone then shows it to you, it's actually quite annoying, because then you know what you're missing if you've got something inferior, and it's quite impressive.
But there are things that they didn't get right with this, and this is the second generation. I had one of the first generation cameras as well. And one of the big issues with it is it's got this massive touchscreen on the back, which is how you mostly interface with the camera, but it's not tiltable. So when you're outside in the sunlight, you can't see anything. And if you're holding the camera at an angle, you can't see what you're recording. So for that reason, again, I'll just hold this up for YouTube. For that reason, you see, I've got this sun hood on the back of the camera, and I also have this separate TFT display, and you need those extra things simply because they didn't put a tilt screen on it. So they've released a new version of the camera. Well, I say new version, another version of the camera. So this is the 4K version with a micro four thirds sensor. Then you've got a 6K version, which takes Canon lenses, and then now they've produced a 6K Pro version, and the tilting screen is one of the things that features on it.
Just
cool.
On the Pro one, or on the whole lineup?
Yeah, just on the Pro.
Okay.
I'm quite happy actually that they're not replacing the other cameras, because they're fairly recent releases anyway. I'd be a bit disappointed if they did that. The new camera also has built-in ND filters. So these are, again, if you're outside shooting in the sunshine, you want ND filters. So I typically have one attached to the end of my lens when I'm outside filming. So it just cuts down the amount of light coming into the camera, gives you a bit more control over how you you set up the shots. So this particular camera's got them built in. Just press the buttons and it swaps them over electronically. It's also using the Sony batteries now.
Okay.
So you're getting a longer battery life, which is one of the big complaints about these things, which again is why I've got a battery holder on the front of mine for a large Sony battery.
Be honest, that rig is what damaged your shoulder, isn't it, basically? Just lifting that up.
Probably is. It is quite heavy, actually. Yeah. So it's a good step forward. It's great. And there's also an optional viewfinder as well. So if you want a, electronic viewfinder, it is another $500, and the camera itself is $2,500.
Wow.
$2,500. But it's a lot of camera for the money. And the dynamic range is really excellent, and there's some new color science with it as well.
Oh, okay.
But what I particularly love about Blackmagic is they're releasing that new color science for all of the cameras. So they're doing an update for the range, and they'll all get that update. So good solid stuff from Blackmagic.
Cool.
On the cameras. So I'm quite excited about that. I think when we get round to sort of redoing our studio and when we're ready to spend some money again, it probably will be a case of switching over to Blackmagic cams, because you can do a lot more with them, including control them remotely, which kind of ties in as well to the other product that they announced.
The ATEM, which is an existing product. So for those that don't know, an ATEM is essentially a video switcher / router. And again, that probably may not mean, if you don't know what that is, you don't know what that is. So I think when you're doing live production, you might have multiple cameras set up, you might have a media stream, you might have some stills, and you want to be able to mix all those things together, basically do a live edit, and go from one to another and so on. So if you're doing a YouTube stream, it's something we're thinking about doing for Constant Geekery. So if that's something you're interested in the future, maybe some live streaming with multiple cameras and overlays and that kind of thing, an ATEM will really help you with that. And we've got one of the first offerings, one of the original ATEM Mini, isn't it?
No, ours is we've got an HD. We got a studio model, a rack mountable model.
Yeah.
And which they still sell, and they sell these professional models. The issue with the one that we've got is that you have to match up the frame rates and resolutions of all of the cameras.
Which is fine if you've got all the same cameras, but as we've kind of grown our gear over time, and certain cameras suit better, certain applications better than others, that's not always possible, and you suddenly find that not all cameras have the same output settings, which can lead to compromise.
Yeah, especially if you just want to do something as simple as take a feed off of a laptop. So we think of some of the live events that we've done where you might have a conference where you've got a couple of angles on the speaker. You've also got a presentation or a slideshow going, which is running off a media playing laptop, and you kind of got to sync all these things up. And so what the newer consumer ATEMs do is that they've got inbuilt converters. So you don't have to worry about any of that. You just plug it in and it converts it to whatever output format you want and just makes it easy.
And it all runs on HDMI, doesn't it? As opposed to the arguably
SDI.
better SDI, but more expensive and less accessible for lots of people.
Yeah.
So you can plug all these things in. It does all that. What it also does is it gives you a hardware switcher, so you can switch between things, or you can use a software switcher. And depending on which model you get, it also includes. In fact, I think they all include live broadcasting, streaming. I think they all do that. Even that's the basic application that you get in them now. So they will all upload to YouTube or stream to YouTube or whichever streaming service you want. On top of that, you've got different models that have extra features, so more video channels. There's an ISO range, which will record all your channels that you're doing to a hard disk drive or array of hard disk drives, or SSDs more commonly, really, which will then create a DaVinci ISO, which you can then pop in and then edit your live footage after that.
I think that's amazing. I think about the example of the conferences or the weddings. So if you imagine, we did a wedding last year where we live streamed the service because of lockdown. It was one of those issues where you could only have a small wedding gathering, but you want to capture it for all of the audience who you're streaming to. You want to catch the mother and father's reactions to different bits. So you're kind of switching the cameras, and you hope you get it right as a live broadcast. And at the end of it, you've got a copy of what you did with all of those changes, but you can't go back and re-edit it unless you were to, press record on each individual camera and then ingest the footage and start again. But what you're talking about here, so is you do that live edit, then you can just open it up in DaVinci Resolve, and there are all your edits. So you can tighten up the bits that you didn't get quite right, make some changes after the fact, and then you can give the newly wedded couple a copy of their service with minimal effort. And that's just one application for it. There's so many different applications.
It is
live
brilliant.
YouTubing would be great.
It is brilliant, and I will be getting one. There's no doubt about that. I will be getting one. Just to be clear, these are already out. They announced some newer models with more channels and more power, and they're very, very impressive. But yeah, they're very cool.
Yeah, so the 4-channel models were out, and they've added the 8-channel models, which are huge. They also include stuff like Virtual Studio as well, which is something, we've got a green screen actually in our studio. We've never played with it, but we could actually make a Virtual Studio set and do sort of live keying and all sorts of stuff. Quite exciting.
Definitely.
So whether that's of interest to you guys or not, I no idea. It's a little bit different to what we usually talk about, but it's interesting to us. It's interesting tech, and a good example actually of progression within the video technology industry, but how it's actually saving time. And
and something else that's probably worth mentioning, because it does very much tie back into M1 and all that kind of thing, is these machines do all that fairly sophisticated on-demand processing without fans, because they have to be silent. That's quite impressive.
With no computer in there. Just goes to show what you can do with dedicated encoders and decoders.
Definitely.
So pretty exciting. Just one other thing from the news that you wanted to talk about, Pete.
Yeah, nVidia. We've griped a bit about the shortage of GPUs from nVidia after their big launch announcements of the 3080, 3090, and all that kind of stuff. Well, nVidia is purposely hobbling its new RTX 3060 GPU. Do you know why they're doing it? Have you heard about this?
I have heard about this. Yeah, so they're limiting its hashing performance for mining cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
To roughly half, I think.
That's it. Yeah, that's it. And the reason behind that is because they're trying to blame the GPU shortage on crypto miners who are taking the cards or buying the cards so that they can mine Bitcoin or Ethereum or whatever it might be that they're mining, and they're bidding out the gamers, which I'm not sure is entirely the whole truth.
No, that's absolutely not the truth at all.
But they are. You have to admit they're using it as a good opportunity, because they're going to also release a dedicated crypto mining card, which has no GPU capability whatsoever. So maybe it's an opportunity to use a bit of publicity to launch a new product.
Yeah, I have to say, I mean, Linus Tech Tips did a video on this just a couple of days ago, and he's very knowledgeable on the subject and put it better than I think I could. But the general gist of this is that nVidia only care about money, of course. They're a company beholden to the shareholders, and cryptocurrency miners buy a lot of graphics cards, so they're quite happy to sell them graphics cards. But this is a nice little move where they can sell this mining-only GPU, which is still the same GPU. It's just, they produce these cards without any outputs on. And in fact, they've done it before. This isn't the first time they've done it. But once these cards become obsolete and no use for hashing anymore, so as soon as they use more power than they can generate profit, the miners will get rid of them. But these cards have no use whatsoever to gamers. So there's no second-hand market for them. There's no point in their existence. So it's just a whole bunch of e-waste.
Landfill.
And nVidia will sell more powerful GPUs to them. And let's be honest here, if they're going to software hobble the 3060, I don't imagine it's going to be very difficult to unhobble it through software hacks. So I don't think it changes anything at all. It's a bit of smoke and mirrors and misdirection, and nVidia claiming to to show some consideration to gamers when in actual fact they really couldn't give a toss, I don't think, where their money comes from. That's my feeling on it.
Yeah, fair enough. I just thought it was interesting as a supposed reason for that, but yeah, I was as sceptical as you.
I am planning to do a video for the main channel actually about the unobtainium issue, because it's not just nVidia. You can't get any of AMD's graphics cards either. And this is even having a knock-on effect to older generation cards.
Right.
So you can't get a 5700 XT.
Really?
No, they're going on eBay for like £600 to £800 each, which is used. Which is, I'm pretty sure I paid about £400 new for. I've got two of them, but I'm sure they were each about £400 new. It's crazy. So you sort of think to yourself, oh, perhaps I should lob mine on eBay and make a quick profit. But then, of course, you can't buy any other graphics cards to replace it. So it's a waste of time.
So it's not a good time for you to be teaching your 12-year-old son about how to build computers and for him to plug in a GPU with the polarity around the wrong way and turn it on.
That didn't happen, did it?
Yeah.
Oh. So you're adding to the GPU shortages?
Well, not because I can't get one. But yeah, he turned it on and he said, "Dad, there's a funny smell and some smoke coming from the graphics card."
How can you even do that? I thought the plugs only went in one way.
So did I.
He's a determined lad. This plug will go in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a shame.
Lesson learnt the expensive way. It was an older graphics card, but it's the challenge of replacing it now. But never mind.
Well, nVidia are knocking out some older cards again, aren't they? To as a stopgap for the market, just because they're on a different process and
how convenient to have a stopgap.
Oh dear me! Let's. We're getting too sarcastic. Let's move on to our main topic for the week, Pete.
Okay. What was it
again? SSD usage.
Yeah.
And lots of people very concerned about the lifespan of the SSD in their Apple M1 Mac because of the size of the swap files that are being created.
Yeah.
So I did a video on this where I broke it down and showed how, the lifespan of an SSD is measured and how that breaks down into a lot of data every day. And that is something we don't need to worry about. And that got a little bit of a mixed response. Quite a few people have kind of said, well, hang on a minute. Loads of reports on the forums of massive swap file usage and massive usage of data on SSDs. Terabytes and terabytes worth.
Yeah.
People who apparently have already used 30% of the lifespan of their SSD in their M1 Mac in like 3 months.
Well, this was the comment that we sort of paused from earlier from Sunday Races about Lightroom Classic on Apple Silicon's running on Rosetta. Some reports of massive swapping of 100 gigabytes in 15 minutes, according to one user.
Yeah, it does seem to be the Adobe products that are running through Rosetta, because Premiere users are also reporting the same thing. So the first thing we need to understand is this an issue that's caused by Apple in the software for Mac OS, or is this a hardware issue? And the only way to determine that is perhaps to look at a professional user who uses SSDs a lot, like, say, for instance, me, and who also doesn't use Adobe products because he can't stand their ridiculous subscription pricing model, like, for instance, me.
So why don't we talk about you?
Okay, let's talk about me. That sounds really self-centered. But I've got on my desk here in front of me, which you won't be able to see on camera, but I have my M1 Mac Mini, which is what I'm currently using to record audio for the podcast in Logic. And I'm talking to Pete on Zoom through the same system. And not switched on at the moment is my Lenovo PC workstation. So the Mac I've had for, 4 months?
Yep, give or take.
There or thereabouts. The Lenovo I think I've had for a couple of months. Both have got SSDs in. I've probably used the Lenovo twice as much as I've used the Mac Mini, in fairness. So they're probably at about the same level of usage. So one of them is running Mac OS with an M1 chip, and one is running Windows 10. So I looked up the stats, which you can do. Look up how much data has been written to the SSD. So, Pete, how much data do you feel that I may have written to my SSD in the M1 Mac Mini in 4 months?
I don't know. How am I supposed to gauge that?
You've got to take a wild guess. And unlike last week when you put all the answers in the notes so I could look really intelligent, I haven't put the answer in the notes.
Yeah,
so
thanks.
You do actually have to guess.
Thanks for that. So you're using it for video editing?
I have done some video edits on it, quite a few video edits on it. Yeah.
200 gigabytes.
No, it's actually 1.2 terabytes.
Well, I was off. Okay.
1.2 terabytes.
Thanks for making me look stupid in front of all of our subscribers and listeners. Appreciate that.
You don't need my help to do that. In fairness, though, there's no way you could have known the answer to that question, Pete. And this is a key point, because lots of people keep asking me how many gigabytes this and how much of that. And it's like, I don't know. It totally depends on how you use your computer. So every case is different.
Yeah.
My case, 1.2 terabytes, which I'm completely fine with. That seems perfectly reasonable. The PC, any thoughts on that? Bear in mind the M1 does all that swapping on the SSD. But they've probably been used roughly equivalent.
I don't know. I could go and just be really facetious one way or the other. So I'm going to go 200 gigabytes.
Yeah. The answer, Pete, is 1.2 terabytes.
Are you sure you're not going senile and you just looked at the same device twice?
No, I promise you, because I had to do one from the command line and one with Crystal Disk. So I've written the exact same amount to both drives. Wow. So with roughly the same amount of usage. So I don't personally think it's macOS necessarily to blame. Now, bear in mind, the way that I work, I have additional SSDs in my workstation, and that's where my video files sit when I'm doing video editing. And if I'm video editing on the M1, I'm using an external drive. Because who in their right mind would use the internal, soldered-on, unreplaceable, unrepairable SSD for moving heavyweight video files around?
You just know there's someone listening to this now going,
oops. Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean that to sound... Actually, if you don't know...
Get yourself some of these, some T5s or some T7s. Samsungs, they're great.
It's not like Apple tell people, they're waxing lyrical about how great this thing is for working with video, but they don't bother telling anybody, actually, you probably want to make sure your video files are on external drives. But here's what worried me, Pete. I can't find the page again, but I was reading this a couple of days ago, a forum post, and there was one guy who posted on there, and clearly a professional or someone who's doing video editing for work using Adobe Premiere, and has replaced 3 Intel machines with M1 Macs. And which M1 Mac do you suppose they've used for these professional video workflows where they're hammering the systems day in, day out? Which one do you suppose they've gone and bought?
Well, based on how you're leading me here, they've gone for the MacBook Air 8 gigabyte, haven't they?
Exactly.
Idiots.
Exactly. And
sorry, should I say that? Yeah, I should.
Yeah, I think you should.
Idiots.
We said early on in our videos that professional users just hold your horses and hang on, because the first outing of any new technology is going to have issues. And the M1 does have some issues. And who in their right minds, who is a professional video editor, thinks to themselves, actually, I only need 8 gig of RAM in my system to be shared between my CPU and my GPU for working with 4K video?
I think I had that thought maybe 15 years ago.
It's just bizarre. It's bizarre the choices people are making. So I've got no sympathy for someone who's made that choice. If you're a professional user and you've bought the wrong machine, you've taken a risk. You've replaced established known quantities with an unknown quantity. I mean, it's not just a new CPU, it was in a brand new operating system as well. And if you're using Adobe products that are not M1 optimized yet, what's the point of switching?
Should have listened to Constant Geekery. That's all I can say.
And so now these guys who are absolutely hammering their drives are looking at the amount of data they're writing and realizing that their SSD might not last the course. Yeah,
it's kind of a little bit, stir crazy, really, isn't it? To to sort of make that kind of decision, particularly if you're. Did you say they've replaced their machines?
Yeah, that was the gist of it. Yeah.
Right, okay. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't. Interesting. It's kind of straying into what we're going to talk about later, but I did. I had a piece of video work to do the other day, and I wanted to actually do it on the MacBook Air, and I tried, and for various reasons, including ports, which we'll come back to later, it just wasn't working out. So I switched back to my MacBook Pro 16. I'm glad I had it, because if I hadn't have done that, yeah, I could have done it, but it would have been a pain, and that was just inconvenience. What we're talking here about is wearing a machine out long before it's intended, because you've got something that wasn't intended for the job.
Yeah. And again, I've got to just clarify, because we get loads of people who say you can use it for this and it does work, and you're absolutely right, you can. If you get a 16 gigabyte M1, you can do some pretty decent video editing with that. And if you make use of proxy media and other stuff, you can even do fairly complex video editing with an M1. But when it comes to final renders, it doesn't have the GPU horsepower. You can't layer stuff up. You can't, you've got to use these sort of workarounds to make your life easier. And if you're trying to do it on the 8 gigabyte, anything serious, it will choke it eventually, because it just can't keep up with the amount of RAM that's needed by the GPU and the CPU for that kind of workload. 4K video is huge.
Yeah.
Unless you're working with consumer codecs, and it's using that onboard silicon to do the rapid encoding and decoding. And if you're using Final Cut Pro, where Apple has optimized the machine, but that's not what we're talking about here. You and I use DaVinci Resolve as well as Final Cut, and these people are using Adobe Premiere. Well, at least Resolve has a version that's optimized for M1.
Yeah.
As far as I'm aware, Premiere, it might be in beta now, but I think about when we're thinking about equipment for our web studio.
Yeah.
Which we had a conversation about this last week.
We did.
We have to think about, when are we going to replace our equipment? We've got a lot of equipment, a lot of staff, and we need to cycle it and keep them efficient. It's our bread and butter at the end of the day. They've got to have equipment that works, and we do have a raft of developer machines and other bits and bobs that are coming up for renewal. So instead of just going out and buying M1 based on YouTube hype and what Apple said, we gave one to our sysadmin to test. And after doing some testing, he came back and said it can do most of the things for our workflow, but not all of them. And on that basis, we said, well, we're not ready to buy it yet. And since then, we've discovered the issues. Well, we're not going to put our developers through that. We're not going to give them a machine that has problems, even if they are minor niggles. Why would we invest in that for our business? This is our business. So
it's what earns us our money. It's what puts bread on the table and keeps us gainfully employed.
That's it. Anyway, I'm waffling. I guess my point is just that, if this is a mission critical business purchase, if you're in the position, where you need to buy a computer for a mission critical business purchase, that computer should not at this point in time be an M1 Mac.
Do you think a lot of this is, because we're obviously a business with a number of people who contribute to that decision-making process. I wonder if a lot of these are maybe freelance gig economists who are, suckered by all the hype and marketing. No offence if you've made a decision based on hype and marketing, because it's easily done. I've done it, but I wonder if it's more that kind of, oh yeah, this will make my workflow faster, without thinking about those impacts until after the event. Because I've been there, I've done that.
Yeah, I think it's entirely possible. People are being very focused on benchmarks these days, because, we do it as well. When we're reviewing kit, we benchmark it. We use the benchmark tools, so everyone focuses in on the numbers, and they make the assumption that, hang on a minute, my computer has got a lower number, therefore it must be inferior. Well, no, it doesn't really work like that. If you're happy with the speed of your computer, then it's fine, isn't it? You don't need something necessarily that's faster, which is kind of the point Intel very badly made when we discussed that last week.
I suppose it doesn't help either when Apple are putting out videos where they're gifting M1s to professionals and getting their opinion, of that ilk, getting them to sort of say, "Oh, what's it like?" It's yeah, I can edit all day in a coffee shop, and it's like, well, yeah, but really,
Well, and that's fine. I mean, there's a lot of professional use cases where you could go out and buy an M1. So I probably need to clarify that. That we're talking about where heavy lifting on the computer. I use the example of a journalist. A journalist is a professional, but at the end of the day, what do they need access to?
yeah,
I need access to the internet and some writing software, a word processor, that kind of thing. Well, yeah, M1, perfect. All day battery life, brilliant choice. So that is a professional application that's mission critical where an M1 would be appropriate. So I think when we're talking about it, we're talking from our perspective as creative professionals. So we're talking about photographers who are working to deadlines, video producers and videographers, whether they're working on larger productions or, even a wedding videographer or an event videographer. Again, it's mission critical and you're working to deadlines. Why risk having a machine that's just not ready yet?
Yeah, completely agree.
And our example of web development, okay, most of the stuff is working. I think even the stuff that wasn't working is now mostly working, but we're still not ready to pull the trigger.
Well, because it's a hard stop. If you find one critical thing that you rely on 5% of the time, but you absolutely rely on it that 5% of the time, doesn't work, then you're stuffed.
Yeah. So you've got to do your homework. I think if we come back to the SSD issue, do we need to be concerned about it? Well, I'd still say no, you don't need to be concerned about it. But obviously some people do need to be concerned. But the kind of people that need to be concerned are people who are using the machine beyond what it was designed to do.
Yeah.
It's not designed as a media storage system, where to do massive. I think that guy that I mentioned who was using one of the machines purely for transcoding video. And obviously then it's using, if it's Adobe Premiere, it's using massive swapfile. And it's not the right machine for that job. There are better machines to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
do you remember once we were out for a drive, a couple of years ago now, and we saw a Fiat 500? Does that ring any bells?
Well,
So a Fiat 500
really, no.
is a very small micro car. If you don't live in the UK, you probably never see one. Look them up. They're very little. Nothing wrong with them. Perfectly good little runabout. But this car had a massive roof box on it. 5 adults in it, and I'm talking. It's a tiny car, and a luggage rack, because it's kind of that Italian style-y type thing. A luggage rack on the back, which was also loaded up, and it was running so low to the ground. And I can remember saying to you at the time, I used some tech analogy of whatever we were talking about at the time. I think it was to do with a particular blogging platform that people use inappropriately for e-commerce and stuff like that, but we won't go there now. But that's a really good example of where perfectly good little car, but completely inappropriate for the use that it was being subjected to.
Yeah, it's a good example. We do a lot of car analogies on this channel, don't we?
Yeah, definitely feel that we're going that way eventually.
Let's drive on to the next topic.
Oh, nicely steered into that. Yeah,
that was I just shifted gears and moved straight into it.
Well, that's very smooth of you. But before we change lanes, let's just put the brakes on a little bit and just say, are we going to be talking next about the next iteration of Apple Silicon, or what I like to call as your sellout video?
My sellout video. Yeah, let's talk about my sellout video. I want to defend myself now. I want to say why I made the video.
Yeah, go on then, and I'll give you my thoughts on it.
Okay, loads and loads of people are talking about Apple's next processor and using the name M1X. Now, it may well be that Apple calls their next iteration of Apple Silicon M1X. That's perfectly reasonable, but they have not confirmed that. And yet, if you browse YouTube, you could convince yourself that M1X is a real thing that's already been launched, to the point where a particular website has posted, found out yesterday, has posted a benchmark of the M1X.
Have
benchmarks. Yeah, but this website, well, I don't need to be coy about it is CPU Monkey. And what they do is they show CPUs and they show their Geekbench performance for single and multi. They show Cinebench and a couple of other GPU-specific things. So third-party benchmarks that they just collate in a convenient way so that you can compare processors and have a look at it. And they've got the M1X in there, which would then imply that the M1X is out and about doing Cinebenches, doing Geekbench tests, and other stuff. And they have this kind of disclaimer box at the top of the screen sort of saying this is a pre-production model, blah, blah, blah. And this is utter nonsense. Are we to assume from this that Apple has reached out to CPU Monkey and gone, hey, I know that we're usually really secretive about our stuff and don't really give it out to anybody, but since you're CPU Monkey, would you like to have our pre-production M1X so that you can go onto all these third-party benchmarks and reveal our new secret source?
I don't think that's happened.
I don't think that's happened. I'll be honest. No. So it is basically what I think they've done is some predictions, just like I've done. So I can't really shout at them for that. But they're posting it as though it is a real thing, and I think the reason for doing this is to get attention, and it has got attention because news outlets are picking up on this now, saying that benchmarks have been leaked. That's how they're referring to it.
And that's the thing that gets me about all of these things is there's nothing wrong with speculating. Like you say in your video, it's fun. It's what we do as geeks. But it's a wholly different thing to position yourself as if you've got some insider knowledge or information or images. You know, there was a video I was watching probably in January now, and it was claiming to be, here's the 3D models of the new iMacs. And actually, you know, you don't have to do much digging to find actually some talented CGI modeler has put them together based on just what he thinks, you know, and they look great, they look credible, but that's all it is. And you've got someone passing off speculation as authentic information that they have somehow got the secret track on, and it doesn't do them any good in the long term, and you know that's the difference, isn't it?
Yeah, it's misleading. I was very cautious when I very clearly stated these are just, no one really knows, these are just predictions in the graphics. You know, I didn't refer to an M1X other than in discussing possible names in the graphics. I put M ? I called it an M chip throughout. I made it clear that these are just predictions and what ifs, because that is fun to do. And I don't want to get confused with that. You know,
I would like to point out that our channel has got a 100% record in predicting the names of Apple Silicon chips, though.
Well, one of them so far.
Yeah, we got it right. We said it would be an M1. I said I thought it would be an M1, and lo and behold, it was. Now, it's not because I'm best mates with Tim Cook.
I don't think you did. I think you said it would be an M14, so you were half right.
No, I don't think so. I don't remember that, but there's no way to prove it, so I was right. So, but my point is, it's not because I'm best mates with Tim Cook or anything. You're right, Tim. How you doing? It's just, you know, you put two and two together and you come up with something that is credible. But yeah. Let's talk about your video then. So, I completely agree with you. There needs to be a hierarchy and an upgrade path. For
so what
users.
I said, just for those who haven't watched the video, what I'm saying is that, you know, you've got a line of products. So we've got, at the moment, the 3 products with the M1 chip are all at the same kind of consumer grade level. There's potentially there is a next model of the 13-inch up. The 4-port model is a step up, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Then you've got the 16-inch, and you'd expect that to be a little bit quicker again. And likewise, within the iMacs, you've got the small one, which could be an M1, but the bigger one, you'd expect something a bit more. So you've got to have that kind of step up in performance so that Apple can charge you more money for said devices. Yeah. And Apple is very keen on charging you more money.
Yeah, although it should be pointed out that, you know, the main focus of Apple is to make everyone's lives better, and you know, various Apple products last year have been groundbreaking in doing that. They've literally changed lives. But that aside, hi Tim.
They have also made many monies for Apple.
They have, but it's a side thing. It's a side thing. It's altruistic. But I agree with you. It has to have that kind of that upgrade path for people to consider splashing more cash. I I think one of the things you mentioned just at the outset that I think possibly might be a little bit too early for the next batch of Apple Silicon is going to the 3nm process.
No, I did say that would be for the M2. Didn't say that would be the next outing.
So don't you hate it, people that just don't watch your videos properly and then just make comments?
You've just rushed through it. I mean, I bet you watched it on like 1.25 speed or something, like everyone seems to. Apparently, I talk too slowly.
No.
No.
1.75.
I could tell you that Tom edits our podcast at double speed because he can't bear it. Poor chap.
Oh dear, it's a sad indictment of society, isn't it? That's the speed we're going at today. Oh, and just as an aside, thank you. Pete's Eats has arrived in a little bit. Thank you very much. Good man.
Okay.
It's warm. So I think we can keep that in. That was nice and seamless. So, where was I? Yeah. So apologies on that. No, I did watch it twice at normal speed. I'll have you know, but I missed that bit. Completely agree with you on the ports. That's the trouble I had with the MacBook Air the other day when I wanted to actually do some serious editing. I needed power, I needed network, I needed external drive. I needed power / network, extra screen and drive. So I needed 3, and I couldn't make it work. So I gave up. So that.
Are you being cautious with the dongles based on the? A few people seem to have had issues with dongles bricking their Macs.
I did hear that, and I have been cautious, but it was more just the utility of I didn't have enough donglage of the right.
No, we need more ports.
Yeah,
and the rumours abound that they're bringing a greater variety of ports as well to the new laptops. And the cynical part of me wonders whether that's because they can't make the M1 or the revised M1 have more than 2 Thunderbolt ports, so they might slap a couple of USB-A's on it going, oh, look, we've listened to everybody, here are some USB-A's.
That would be Apple-esque, wouldn't it?
It's just, you heard it here first, folks. It's just a way of getting around the fact that they can't do it yet.
Yeah.
So,
and then in the next release, when they do work it out, we've realised that no one wants USB-A, so we've had the courage to get rid of them.
Yeah.
Buy more dongles.
And possibly an HDMI port as well. So basically everything that's already on the M1 Mac Mini.
That would be great.
It could be that they do that rather than add more Thunderbolt ports, but still that would still fix the problem. It would be better. I don't think anyone's going to complain actually at having USB-A ports back.
No.
That'd be nice.
Yeah, definitely. So 14-inch potential model, very welcome.
I'd like that.
Yeah, I'm thinking, because when I go from using the MacBook Air, which is obviously a little 13-inch dinky thing, to my 16-inch, it's then that you notice the size, and it is a vast machine, the 16-inch, and I've always liked a bigger machine, as you know, but I think I could be persuaded if the 14, I might possibly go for that, which is a bit of a thing for me to say.
That would be a bit of a first, yeah. So what about the I'm conscious that time is pressing on, Pete, and also your food might be going cold. Actually, I don't care if it goes cold. If you don't enjoy it, that's no skin off my nose after what you did to me.
Difference, but carry on.
Okay. So my prediction, and look, I don't think this is any kind of super special prediction. It's really quite obvious. I think that Apple would look to double the performance cores, so you'd have 8 performance cores and 4 efficiency cores, and double the GPU cores and double the RAM. And I think all of that is perfectly achievable. I actually think that Apple could have done that last year, but they obviously want to have a progression of models. So I suspect that's possible. But one of the things I did wonder, Pete, is whether they might bin the system on chip like they did with the entry level MacBook Air. You get 7 core GPU cores instead of 8.
Yeah, so you were saying 4 efficiency cores, 6 high performance cores, and 12 GPU cores.
Yeah, for the sake of argument, I mean it could be any number, but
yeah,
just to provide an interim measure so that you have that step up. Because, like you just said, Pete, you're a 16-inch user, and you would consider the 14-inch. So how does Apple stop people like you from going down to a 14-inch and spending less money? Well, by putting less performance in the 14-inch.
Yeah, that's true.
So I could see them doing that, and then I could see them then having two models of the iMac, or possibly for both the small and the large. So you could have the M1 entry level, M1 plus a bit in the smaller version of the iMac, and then the M1 plus a bit and the M1 full fat, whatever they end up getting called on the larger iMac. So I think it makes sense to Apple to introduce two more SKUs, basically. So we end up with three different M1 possibilities.
Yeah, which
do you think credible?
Yeah, I do think that's credible. It seems at first when you first said it, I thought that seems very, very complicated for Apple. They're all about simplicity, aren't they? But actually, it's no different from having different Intel chips and different models. Just because we've got one M1 now, it doesn't mean it's ever going to be thus that there's just going to be one CPU per user type. So yeah, maybe an M1 X, but also maybe an M1Z and maybe an M1Y, or who knows? Maybe they'll differentiate them in a completely different way. But it does make sense, particularly with the reasoning between the entry level iMacs and the bigger ones. To have those different performance issues. Because if it was that, then just because I'm a sucker, I probably would stick with the 16-inch. But who knows? I wouldn't need it.
I mean, no, the M1 has enough performance for everything that I do. Where it falls short, I'm talking CPU performance. Where it falls short is memory.
Yeah.
So if there was a 32 gig option, and GPU just is not good enough.
No.
If it was double, it would be acceptable. I might have stuck with it actually. If it had been like that, I might not have gone ahead and bought my workstation.
Interesting.
Because I could have lived with that. And I think if they double the GPU cores, they can get to that kind of 5600M performance, which is the very top spec GPU card for the 16-inch. And I'm pretty sure
they'll be beating it, won't they?
It's like $3,500, isn't it?
Yeah.
That spec.
Yeah.
It's a lot of money. And they'll beat it.
They'll be beating it. And it won't be too far behind the 5700 Radeon Pro in the iMac.
No, not very far.
So.
Within a few thousand points on Geekbench Metal score.
Yeah.
Yeah, so very, very close. Not the 5700 XT with 16 gigs. That would still be a step too far, in my opinion. But since we're talking about GPUs, obviously, our commenter mentioned what GPU options do we think Apple might have in the future, and here is the issue. They can probably get to that 5600M performance, and they can cover off all but one of the iMac GPUs. Let's say, okay, it's not quite as fast as the 5700 Pro, but it's so close that I think most users would take it. But they're not going to get to the 5700 XT. So. And when you think about their Pro machines, and we've discussed this before, you can get I can't even remember what they call it now, but the top graphics card, and you can effectively have four of them in, can't you? Two dual cards.
Yeah.
And, it scores something like, with all of them, I think you're looking at like a 200,000 scoring Geekbench, aren't you? Yeah. Or is it even more than that? It might even be 400,000. I don't know. It's a huge amount anyway. It would
certainly be enough for Farming Simulator.
It would run Farming Simulator, yeah. Probably at HD. That option, of course, is extraordinarily expensive.
Yeah.
So I don't imagine that many people are out there buying it. So it's not like Apple need to suddenly make these things for this massive audience, because there isn't one. And the audience for that kind of expenditure of professional machine is probably going to not be wanting M1 at this point in time anyway. So I actually don't think this is an issue yet. How will Apple solve it in the future? Well, they may well produce a dedicated GPU of their own, or they may well just incorporate AMD drivers and continue using AMD cards in the Mac Pro, as well as having the onboard graphics, so they can get the power efficiency for most tasks, and then you've got your compute power there if you need it, if you're a pro.
Yeah. I don't know why. I like the idea of Apple bringing out its own GPUs. In obviously, they're not going to be, I say obviously, we're talking about something that we don't even know if it exists. I can't see them being part of the system on chip if we're obviously talking about a dedicated GPU within the system that's slightly separate from the system on chip for like really high performance stuff. I like the idea of that because if they apply some of the lessons and the learnings from Apple Silicon in the CPU or the system on chip, let's be clear, that could be quite exciting. But like you, I could equally see them sticking with AMD and just really bolstering what the Apple Silicon can do. And either is plausible, and both are plausible. You know, maybe in the short term we see AMD, and in the future maybe something different. But hopefully we won't have too long to wait to find out what Apple's strategy is going to be there.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see. I mean, whilst the discrete GPU is probably not an immediate issue. I mean, there are people who would go out, video editors as a great example, who would go out and buy that 27-inch iMac with the 5700 graphics card in it, the XT. I mean, that we've got the, I mean, regular viewers of the channel will know, but we've got the iMac with the 8-core i9 in it and a Vega 48, and that is a monster for video editing. It runs rings around the M1 for almost everything.
Yeah, it is a beast.
So those are great computers for video editing, and probably be a good time actually you might be able to snag some of those cheap once they release the M1 version. What Apple tend to do, they seem to, like big resellers like Jigsaw24, for example, where I've bought a couple of Macs from. Once they become end of line, it's almost like Apple will use up stock of components and build a bunch of machines and ship them out to resellers to sell. So they don't sell them themselves on the store, and the resellers get them at a discount and can sell them on cheap. So it may well be that there are some kicking around at that point in time, and it will be a very solid video editing choice if that's your cup of tea.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple of other things I think you touched on in the video that absolutely need to be done. You know, we've talked about memory, GPU, CPU, but they have to fix the Bluetooth and Wi-Fi issues. They have to fix the USB speed issues, and they have to support more than one extra display.
Yeah, without workarounds. I mean, you can get around that with various cables and stuff, but
you shouldn't have to.
That's
the point.
Well, if you can do it, if it's technically possible, and people are connecting more than one display to their machines, so why can't Apple just switch that on? The GPU's got plenty of horsepower to cope with it. There's obviously something just not quite right in their implementation of USB 4/Thunderbolt.
No, but we'll have to wait and see, won't we? Something else I'm going to throw into the mix, and it's not so much around system architecture as it is around design language. I've up until recently agreed that we would see the XDR Pro language being used for the iMacs, because that's what we were thinking since WWDC last year. But do you know what? I'm thinking that Apple might keep that language now for their Pro machines, and actually that the new iMac may look more like an iPad Pro on a stand kind of look.
No, I'm with you. Yeah.
I don't know. Just a feeling I get. I have obviously, seen different concepts from different people, and either would be a good look. I'd be happy with either. So we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, because of course there is the iMac Pro, isn't there? So maybe that one gets the Pro design language, and yeah, it's a good shout.
Yeah, have to wait and see. So yeah, good video, and wasn't clickbaity at all. It was reasonable speculation, which we do like a bit of.
So yeah, it seems to have gone down well. People seem to be enjoying it, so that's good. Got to try and think of something to do next week now. I've got a couple of videos that I shot last week or the week before, but whether or not they'll be as popular is another question.
Yeah, well, we're always looking for suggestions on what you'd like us to cover on, I guess, on both channels really. What you'd like us to talk about on the podcast, and what you'd like to see. Dave does all the heavy lifting on the main channel. That's his channel, but either of us getting involved in that, let us know. And
I think we'd be happy to use this channel as well, not just for podcasts as well. So if there's like deeper dives on stuff where we got opportunity to natter about something, then we'll do that. I think we will wait until we can safely be in the studio again, but that may not be too far away. There's noise of lockdown being loosened, and things seem to be improving in this country.
Then we can make a pretty studio.
Yeah, looking forward to that. That'd be good. Anyway, let's get on to the main event, Pete, and the most important thing in our podcast,
which is
by popular listener vote,
which is that we are probably, by the time this goes out, at 300 subscribers. So that's great news. Thanks for listening to the Constant Geekery podcast. That's all we've got for this week, I think.
No, you need to eat something. Come on.
Oh,
get on with
do
it.
I have to?
You do. And also, my timer is standing arrogantly at 1 hour and 17 minutes.
Sorry
so I'm
about
sure
that,
there's
guys.
some fluffing about in there, but even so, this is a long one. So just basically, tell us what it is. Put it in your face hole.
Can you see that?
And
do you know what it is? Do you know what it is from that?
What's a sandwich?
It is a sandwich, but it's what's in it.
White bread sandwich. Go on, what's in it?
And
you said it was warm.
Yeah.
So I think I know where this is going.
Yeah.
Is that a fried egg?
That's a fried egg. And you might think, the yolk has split. But no, that's mustard.
What type of mustard are we talking about here?
English.
Are we talking
Coleman's
about
English mustard?
Proper mustard. Proper hairy-chested mustard.
Yeah, and now the original suggestion was Tabasco, which we do have somewhere. But I've been given this with some sriracha hot sauce instead. But
I think that's just as good.
That will be fine. So I'm going to just put that on there, and I will... Oh, hang on.
Give it a generous lashing of sriracha, Pete.
It's actually been opened. No, it's not been opened. Hang on.
Oh, I hope it's like when you open the bottle and loads comes out the first time you...
I can't get it off. Oh.
Can you? It's the story of your life, Pete. Oh, dear.
Thank you, David.
I got to stop laughing because I sound like Muttley from Wacky Races.
Penelope Pit Stop as well. Anyone remember that?
I do.
Penelope Pit Stop.
Wasn't there something about chasing a pigeon in one of those cartoons as well?
There was. Catch the pigeon.
Of course, all of this waffle about old cartoons is simply because Pete cannot open a bottle of sriracha.
So sriracha in there.
There we go. Okay. I wouldn't call that lashings. I'd call that dashings. A gentle sprinkling.
Yeah, but it's sriracha, so hang on.
Come on, Pete. Get your laughing gear around it. It's in. He's going for it. There's some mastication going on. I'm waiting to see his eyes water. Perhaps you need to try a bit more, Pete. Pete's chewing. He's going for another bite. It can't be that bad. I can't help but notice that you're going for the corner there, Pete, where probably the least amount of nasty stuff is. Come on. What I want to see you do is get a nice mouthful out of the middle of that. Yeah, go on. I'll be honest, I'm not glad I've seen that, Pete.
I've had no napkins.
That was difficult for me.
It wasn't fun for me.
Got one here. Do you want it?
No.
Is that helpful?
I can't remember who suggested this, but bravo, sir. That is actually quite nice.
Is it?
I wasn't looking forward to it, I'll be honest with you. I was like, because what we were going to do tonight, we're going to do next week, because I didn't have the ingredients, but that is actually quite nice. So bravo on that one. Please keep them coming, because some are good, some are indifferent, and some are very, very awful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, well, get your suggestions in, folks, if you want to see Pete eat anything. I did say that I was going to send you something to eat. He's gone for another bite. We're back to the podcast. We finished Pete Eats. He's just going for it.
Cool.
I promised to send you something to eat, and then I forgot to do it, so my mind has been elsewhere. So I'll have that ready, hopefully, for next week, and I think there will be some amusement.
I'm really looking forward to that. There were a few suggestions as well. We got a couple, so but keep them coming, because it's nice to have a selection to choose from.
That's good. I'm going to. I will buy that though, instead of just stealing it, Pete. So it won't come with a security tag on it or anything.
Got the receipt. I did buy it. Okay, Tesco's jarred.
So I think we've come to a natural conclusion for this episode of the Constant Geekery podcast. So
I think we
it
have.
only remains to say thank you so much for joining us for this entertaining ride, or at least I hope it's been entertaining for you this week. If there's any topics or things you want us to talk about, then suggestions in the comments. Don't forget to keep the suggestions coming for the competition. Can you identify what is the video that's blurred and covered up with purple in the background of our podcast? The winner has got a real treat waiting for them.
It's a compilation of me eating.
The laptop to end all laptops. I've got to be honest, there's not a lot of activity coming in and suggestions, so I don't think people are that keen on winning this piece of junk laptop.
No, it's just more landfill.
It is landfill. Anyway, let's end it there. Well, thank you again. Thanks for all the subscribers. Thanks for the comments. Really appreciate interacting with you guys, and we'll come up with something, I'm sure, for next week's Constant Geekery podcast.
Cheerio.